Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mayor and City Council's joint budget hearings. A reminder, these are views of the draft budgets as presented to the Mayor's office. We will be making changes assuredly from these budgets. This is not the final budget. Let's move forward from there. Mayor's budget hearings are conducted pursuant to the codified ordinances of the City of York, Pennsylvania, specifically the Administrative Code. Article 137.05A provides the city budget shall be prepared annually by the mayor with the assistance of the business administrator. In order to prepare the budget, the mayor shall require all department heads to submit requests for appropriations to him and to appear before him or such other officer as the mayor designates at a public hearing on such requests. The city clerk shall also appear at such hearing and submit for incorporation into the budget the requests for appropriations for the use of council. This proceeding is a hearing, not a meeting. The distinction is significant for the process. A meeting is a gathering of interested persons for the purpose of discussion of matters of interest, such as a town meeting. In a more formal sense, a meeting is a gathering of a constituted body for the purpose of transacting business, as in the regular meetings of City Council, for the purpose of adopting ordinances and passing resolutions to guide the business of the city. A hearing is a more formal proceeding for the purpose of a fact-finding to gather information to aid in decision-making. The information is gathered by the process of taking testimony. A hearing is not a forum for free-flowing discussion. This budget hearing is a forum for the mayor of the City of York and City Council to gather information for the purpose of preparing a budget for submission to City Council for the fiscal year January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. Although this is the mayor's budget hearing, the process of adopting an annual budget involves both the legislative and the executive branches of government, which is why we have now joined together for Mayor City Council budget hearings. Members of City Council have been invited to participate in this hearing because they also need information to make decisions when voting on the adoption of the budget. This hearing is public. Therefore, interested citizens and the news media are welcome to attend. However, this is not a press conference, and so media representatives will not have an opportunity to interrogate those testimony. This is a formal hearing, so arrangements have been made to record the proceedings verbatim. A stenographer is present and will make a verbatim record of everything that is said during this hearing. The budget requests of the city departments will be presented by the elected officials, department directors, deputies, managers, and other involved in the operations of the city and its component units. The mayor and members of his budget staff will question those presenting the budget requests. Members of City Council who so elect will also be given an opportunity to ask questions. After City Council members have had an opportunity to ask questions, the public is invited to participate. Members of the public are invited and encouraged to submit testimony. Public testimony may be submitted in either oral or written form, as is most comfortable for each person, and documentary exhibits may also be presented. Members of the public will be permitted to present testimony at the end of presentations by each department, specifically regarding that department's budget requests. Although there is no established limit on the time allotted for each witness to give oral testimony, such a limitation may be imposed for reasons of time and numbers of persons desiring to speak. Anyone who intends to give oral testimony will be required to register prior to the time for the commencement of the hearing. If there is time available, persons desiring to speak who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak. In this case, due to COVID, we have not registered folks ahead of time, so we will be taking comments at the end of presentations. All speakers will be required to give their name and address at the beginning of their testimony. This is a formal hearing that is being stenographically recorded. The stenographer can only record one speaker at a time. In order to accurately record the testimony, the stenographer must be able to hear the speaker. This hearing is for the purpose of the mayor and the council members to gather information and to have their questions answered. If they can't hear the statements, they will not get the information that they need to make decisions. Consequently, it is of paramount importance that this hearing be conducted in an orderly fashion. Disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. We don't have to worry about that too much on Zoom calls anymore, do we? Anyone who is disruptive in any way, including loud comments and audible conversation, will be required to leave the hearing room or will be silenced by Cliff. The format of each presentation will be that the department personnel present, the mayor gets to ask questions, the budget team then gets to ask questions, then council members, and then we hear from the public. I do want to make a statement before we start, because this is going to be a very difficult year for us in budgeting and in decision making. York City has come to a financial crossroads. I believe I've become known for my brutal honesty and for not sugarcoating York City's challenges. The financial well of the city of York is dry. York City is out of savings. Our revenue is way down because of COVID, and new expenses for pension payment increases and wastewater treatment plant repairs cannot be avoided. We must now make one of the hardest decisions in our city's history. But let me give you some background first. For decades, York City has been putting off the inevitable. First, starting last century, we tried to put off paying pension payments. Then we began taking money from the sewer fund to pay for our general expenses like police and fire. And more recently, we have used the city's savings to pay ever-increasing healthcare costs and the mandated pension payments. Mayor Bracy made a valiant effort at reducing taxes to spur economic growth. I followed and kept our taxes from going up for the last 3 years. All of these actions were taken to help the taxpayers of York while we worked to grow the economy of the city of York and lobbied Harrisburg to address the archaic taxation system that was designed for a city under extremely different economic conditions than we see today, when wealthier, tax-paying businesses and residents could support the cost of running the city and maintaining its infrastructure. Over the past 50 years, we have seen many of these larger tax-paying businesses and wealthier residents leave York City, while the costs of running the city continue to grow and grow. We have seen the property taxes climb to adjust for these losses, which in turn have caused a downward spiral where property values decrease or stay stagnant and taxes must be raised again and again. In fact, the city of York has a taxable property value of less than it did in 2005, with the highest taxes in central Pennsylvania. Now, as leaders and residents of a city with an average income that is one of the lowest in the state, we have been told by Harrisburg that we must solve our own problems and continue to raise taxes on our residents that are barely hanging on to their homes, or turn our government over to them. Yes, we must bear the burden of their flawed taxation system, or turn our decision-making power over to the same people whose system has failed us and who refuse to take action to fix it. York City has had numerous economic studies done that showed that if Harrisburg refused to change the taxation system, or York was unable to develop unprecedented growth, 2018 would be the year that the city would become unable to sustain itself. We held that off for a few more years, but that time when we can no longer pay our bills has come. I vowed when I ran for mayor that I would lower taxes. It was on my campaign signs. I have tried to put every piece in place to develop new homegrown businesses and attract others. We have put a great economic development team together, and we have some amazing businesses growing in York City today. And we have businesses that are working to develop new centers of innovation, business, commerce, and manufacturing as I write this. But these successes are not yet enough to offset the immediate financial problems. So let's get to the problems. We have $14 million worth of bills coming due in 2021 that we can't pay for. How did this happen? Last year and years before, we spent $3 million worth of our savings to continue to pay for healthcare costs that continue to rise. This year, those healthcare costs are rising another close to $1 million. So that's $4 million right there. We have $4 million in fire pension that was deferred because of a great deal between the fire department and the city of York, but the results of that deal are over. So those payments go up $4 million. So now we're up 8 million. We have distressed pension costs that we were not paying in the past, that last year we paid out of our fund balance. This year we can't do it. Now we're up to $10 million. We have another $1 million increase in all the regular expenses of running the city that we deferred last year. And then we have the normal growth of the costs of running the city. We also removed the $3.4 million sewer fund transfer because at the same time that all of this is occurring, the cost of the sewer and refuse has skyrocketed. Our refuse bills have gone up 49%. The new contract is 49% higher. The cost of putting trash into the incinerator has gone up. The cost of them picking up the trash, everything is going up all at the same time. And I say this to you to explain why you are going to hear the budget that you are going to hear. However, we do not leave the council or the public without hope. We do have another plan. We were hoping that that plan would be completed by now. However, due to the vandalism in the computer systems in City Hall, we were unable to roll out something that we believe has a chance to really make a huge difference in the future of York. And that is the potential sale of the York City wastewater treatment plant and system. We will be, hopefully before council chooses to vote, presenting offers on this system that promises to cost us at least $37 million over the next year, over the next 10 years, I'm sorry. It needs $37 million worth of improvements, which we need to pay 46% of. So that's close to $20 million right there. But we will be providing a plan B, an option where the city of York, if we get the right bids, would sell the wastewater treatment plant. We would not be forced to make these archaic cuts, these tax increases and these fee increases. And we would be able to give a 20% tax cut as opposed to the tax increase of 9 mills that is being proposed in this budget. Actually 9 mills for the general fund and 0.25 mills for the recreation fund. So that is where we stand today. I wanted to make sure that before we go into these hearings that everyone that wanted to understand the background of why we are doing what we are doing, why we are proposing both this archaic and draconian tax increase plan, and while we are also proposing a plan that we believe with a little bit of patience may be able to save us all from a lot of pain. So with that, I believe we are ready to open the hearings, and I believe City Council is first on the agenda. Is Madam Clerk Thompson available?
Yep, I sure am. Oh, my hair is messed up. Good evening, everyone, council, budget team, mayor. I am here to present the 2021 expenses for City Council. Everything is basically the same except for the association dues and conferences. In that there you'll see an increase of $14,000, and that is for the City of York's membership to the Pennsylvania Municipal League. PML is a nonprofit organization established in 1900 as an advocate for Pennsylvania's third-class cities and is a valuable source to the City of York. PML's Board of Directors oversees the administration of a wide array of municipal services, including legislative advocacy on both the state and federal levels, publications designed to educate and inform, education and training certification programs, membership research and inquiries, consulting-based programs, and group insurance trusts are some of the services that PML offers. So York City Council wanted to get our membership back on that, so I included $14,000 for that. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same. A couple of reductions, no request for books and subscriptions, no request for office equipment or furniture. So I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Yes, what line item was the increase that you mentioned?
It should be association dues and conferences, and that is 44030. And then I also have an amount in there for council if they want to attend any of the PML conferences. I believe I gave them each about $1,000 or so for the entire year.
So that's approximately $20,000 total?
$19,450.
Okay, I have no further questions. Budget team?
No, Mayor.
Hearing none. Council members? And Cliff, can you chime in and tell anyone from the public how they can comment?
Sure. If there's anybody watching or listening over the phone, if you're on the phone, you need to press *9 in order to raise your hand. Once I see a hand has gone up, I will then ask you to unmute your mic. When I do that, you can go ahead and speak. In order to unmute your mic, if you're on the phone, you need to press *6. If you're on Zoom on a computer or a smartphone, there's a button that just says raise hand. Just click that, and then I'll enable you to speak.
Thank you, Cliff. Hearing nothing more, we will move on to the city controller's budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Frost, York City Controller. I'm here to present our 2021 expenses to the City Council in the Office of the Mayor. But before I get started, I'd like to review what the City Controller actually does and our role in our government. Oftentimes when I'm out in the community and let people know that I'm an independently elected official as the City Controller, many people are not aware of the functions of my office. So the City Controller is an autonomous office of the city government, and it's headed by the City Controller. I'm an independently elected official that is responsible for the review and approval of all expenditures and obligations of the city. The City Controller performs the following functions. We are to perform the internal audit function in compliance with our third-class city code, other state laws, and the City of York administrative policies. We are to also insist in audits conducted by our independent external auditors and have the ability and authority to issue subpoenas in order to fulfill the duties and responsibilities of the Office of the City Controller. This is to protect and ensure that we are protecting the York City tax dollars from waste, fraud, and abuse. Part of my request, I do have some additional requests, and the biggest one is the addition of a potential part-time auditor for approximately $30,000 if as part of Plan A, and depending on the outcome of the wastewater treatment plan as part of Plan B, the potential for a full-time city auditor.
Thank you, Madam Controller. I guess I just need to understand a little bit how, when we're cutting staff in almost every other area, how we are able to add staff in your department.
No, that's a good question, Mayor, and I actually anticipated that question. This is a staff again, and that's why I reviewed what my office function is. And again, we are to perform the internal audit function as per the compliance of our third-class city code. As it stands, I do not have the resources in order to meet that requirement of our city. As we sit here and talk about the general fund and usage of taxpayer dollars in the proper manner, that internal audit function is essential to our city's government. It is something that should have probably, and I don't want to start going back in the past, but this is something that the city controller has not seen an increase in staff in over 20 years. Although the city has evolved, our office has not been afforded the budget to evolve with this changing climate and the things that are changing within our city government. So I know it's a hard sell. I know it's a tough call, but I have to do my due diligence and present this. And it's also why I'm only requesting part-time. It is part-time. It is not going to increase our healthcare costs. It won't increase pension costs. And the $30,000 increase, I don't think will get us out of the budget crisis that we're in.
Council member, or I'm sorry, budget team?
No questions, Mayor.
Council members?
I have a question about the audits. Allison, how many audits are you supposed to do a year? How many have you done? And what happens if you don't get them done?
That's a good question, Councilwoman Ritter-Dixon. So I perform audits. Audits should really be performed on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And per our city code, there actually should be reporting out to City Council on an annual basis of those audit findings, internal audit findings. I also need to add that this internal audit function, this is not about the City Controller's office. This is about our overall government. An internal auditor will benefit our overall government as we work to complete our external audits in a more timely fashion. We will be able to assist with that as per our job functions. It is a benefit to, it's not about the City Controller's office. It's a benefit to us all and to all our taxpayers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Any questions from the public? Hearing none, thank you very much, Madam Controller.
Thank you.
1 second, we just got a question. I'm gonna allow this person through. Stephanie, are you there? Can you speak? Can you unmute your mic?
Yes, good evening. This is Stephanie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Stephanie Seaton. I'm resident, City of York. I just have a question for the controller. During your time as the controller, have you found any instances of fraud, abuse, waste, and any of the other functions that you said you perform in that capacity?
I have not found any instances of a fraud in that capacity. No, I have not.
Abuse or waste, or because I think all of those things would kind of contribute to the overall budget of the city and the state that we're in. So that's why I'm asking.
I have not seen any what I would consider abuse. Waste is, I think, a subjective. It can be kind of subjective in the sense that I do tend to have a differencing of opinion of how resources should be allocated, but that is not within my control or my purview. I can only make suggestions and recommendations at my level.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the community? Okay, once again, thank you, Madam Controller.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And next we will hear from the Treasurer's Office. There he is. Yep. Mr. Treasurer, you may be on mute.
I'm not on mute. Can you hear me?
Can now.
Okay, thank you. This has really been a very trying year for the Treasurer's Office, as with other departments at the city. On the other hand, has been a very successful year in that we have, for the first time, consolidated our revenue collection into one office. That began about the time we had the first COVID spread in the city of York that began to affect, of course, our day-to-day operations. Of course, the other major thing that happened was the break-in that came later in the year that's also compromised our operations significantly. On the other hand, I think there have been great accomplishments this year. We have worked very diligently to reevaluate our retention services, our organizations for those documents that we keep on an ongoing basis. We've worked on our operating procedures to be more efficient and economical, and to create procedures that we can encourage the participation of all departments in a better organized manner. We've worked very hard with the Department of Business Administration on our sewer refuge amnesty program, have worked with the Department of Community and Economic Development on the expansion of our abatement program for economic and community development. We've established new procedures with the General Authority to better manage the Bureau of Parking revenue and records. And we have surely tried to expand our ability to contact and communicate with the public. In doing so, we now have many more emails that we can write back and respond very quickly, as the same thing with phone numbers that we haven't ever had before. We have surely set some, we think, very needed goals and objectives for the coming year as we continue to clean up our document storage area, to do some cross-training for our clerks so that they can handle responsibilities across the swath of responsibilities of the office. We're reviewing and auditing our taxpayers that are eligible for homestead exclusions to be sure that those are being received by city residents that qualify for these. We're surely working on our chart of accounts, so we will create a clearer budget for the public so you can really understand where the revenue is coming from and where the expenses are going. We're also working to increase our up-to-date accuracy. We've always lagged behind a little, keeping our data up to date. So we're working on an auto transfer of our weekly Treasurer's Office receipts, so those will go directly into our accounting system. So a lot of things are happening and in process as we speak. As we look at our budget, we really don't have very many expenses. Our budget lines are very steady from year to year. We have been delightfully surprised this year by our revenue that we've received from real estate taxes. We are pretty much on target for the end of the year. We may even exceed some of the numbers that are in the budget as far as our tax claim revenue and our realty transfer taxes that are coming in here at the end of the year at a more comfortable rate than we were feeling when we first started putting the budget together. Of course, we have no idea what will happen next year. That's a really frightening thing to look forward, because we do not know how many people are going to be impacted by the continuation of COVID and lack of jobs and salaries, and therefore ability to pay taxes. We have, if you will notice, if you compare our budget this year to last year, the big increase is in salaries. That's mainly because three of the clerks have moved from what was the finance office to the treasurer's office. This is not an increase in staff. This is just a transfer of staff from one department to another department. Any questions on anything?
Yes, and can you explain that a little bit? I know that for purposes of following the state compliance laws, we have transferred more responsibility to the treasurer's department and to you as an elected official, someone who is a part-time employee to the city of York. So could you explain a little bit further the additional leadership and responsibilities that you have taken on in your role over the past year, as we have transitioned collections from the finance department, which would have been under the administration, under the kind of the charge of the mayor, and now put those into the charge of the treasurer?
Sure. We are now collecting all revenue for the city of York. This comes to about $150 million a year. About, of course, $110 million of that is city money, but we continue to collect taxes for the York City School District and the Business Improvement District. You will notice in our budget this year, there's a decrease in the revenue that we receive from the county because we are no longer collecting county taxes. That really hasn't translated into a lot of savings because we still have to go through the same process that we've always gone through before. So instead of our collections applying to in one bill to two different taxing entities, it just applies to one. The process is pretty much the same. We're now doing the collection of all grant monies, all money from the parking and garages for the general authority, money from all of the departments at city, especially we get daily deposits from the Department of Permits, Planning and Zoning, and Health Department recently have been major as we look forward to how the budget is moving this year and how we have revenue coming in. It's given us an opportunity, though, to keep our revenue up to date. I can give you revenue figures through October 30th. At this moment, I could probably come pretty close to the next few days that have occurred as well. So I think that will really help us in making decisions as we move forward as to what our expenses are, what our cash flow is, and how we're looking to the future and what needs to be done. Any questions?
All right, I was muted. I have another question. And the large increase in income for taxes then is based on the proposed 9 mil increase, correct?
That is correct. Yes, you'll see in your projections a jump in from nearly 16 million to nearly 24 million, and that is the 9% mill increase.
Not 9%, 9.
9 mil, yes, not 9%.
Any questions from the budget team? Any questions from City Council? Any questions from the community? Giving them a minute since we're having a little delay in, or we had a little delay in response on the last one. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the mayor's office budget. It is pretty simple. I will save more remarks regarding the mayor's office for our more formal proposal of things that have been accomplished through the year. However, I would like to thank everyone involved, the controller's office, the treasurer's office, the council, and all employees on the transition of our billing and collections of the refuse and sewer payments to the York Water Company. We've had some bumps, which any kind of transfer like that does. And I think from what I'm hearing, everything is working out very smoothly. As soon as we get to catch up on the impact from the computer crisis, I believe we will be moving forward with a lot more of the amnesty programs and payment plans. So again, thank you everyone for that. I don't have much to say about our budget. Our expenses have gone up just steady with everything. And you will notice, increases in our, and this is kind of across the board. You'll see some O&E pension numbers and some other numbers that have increased because I think more because they've been broken out. Kim, could you explain that a little bit regarding how some of the numbers have been broken out more than they have been in the past because of going to this new system?
Sure. We were lucky enough, and it was perfect timing. We're given the approval to take advantage of a new program called OpenGov to help us with our budgeting process. And it was a godsend, especially after the break-in left us unable to get to our what would have been our old budgeting system. So, and part of that is improved processes when it comes to workforce planning. And a lot of the cost associated with workforce was always part of the insurance allocations and the business administration allocations that you had seen in the past. And this year, we were able to split them out and give them their own lines so that we're more transparent about the actual cost included. In this budget in particular, there's a bit of a jump from what would have been last year due to a slight increase in salaries because of position changing around. So that's the story when you go across if we encounter a department that has the same exact staffing and there being moderate increases, which would have been associated with like union employees having contractual increases, you should be able to see that the reduction in the insurance allocations and the business administration allocations are comparable to what these new items are at the top that you'll see under fringe benefits.
And Kim, we can circle back on this, but this is not the number that I expected to see for the salaries there. So we can discuss that further. I'm not sure what that increase is. So we can come back and look at that.
Yep, noted.
Any questions from the budget team?
No.
And council, you may notice a pattern. Frequently prior to my administration, particularly Henry, Henry and I who've experienced multiple years of this, these budgets are coming out after the budget team has already reviewed them, put them together, and had many conversations about alterations to the budgets prior to us putting them together, so that we were providing you a better draft than the initial draft that used to come out years ago. So if the budget team doesn't have that many questions, that's because the budget team has already pretty thoroughly gone through these budgets. So council members, questions? Hearing none, questions from the public?
Mayor Helfrich,
Yes.
this is actually Alice Ann Frost. I know it's popping up as Leona Batson.
Okay.
but just a quick question. You said you're going to look into, you said your salaries. I saw the salaries. There was a $20,000 increase.
Yeah, and I think I know what it might be.
Mhm.
Was there when there was a transfer of chief of staff back, was there a salary reduction included in that movement, Kim?
Yes. Well, it was the same salary that would have been if the chief of staff was in your position, was in your department the whole time. Any additional pay was associated with the acting role under Econ Dev.
So, okay, so I guess where did this come from? There weren't annual increases of that much over those 2 years or a year and a half that he was in that position. They certainly did not go to the chief of staff, I can tell you that.
No, give me 1 second to make sure I can clarify my answer for you.
I think there might have been, well, oh, I know what it was. I know exactly what it was, because we had Nicole and Ricky as my staff. And
Nicole?
now Nicole, yes, now Nicole is no longer with us, and we moved the chief of staff's position, which was a position that had originally been paid about $15,000 or more than that administrative position. So if you go back down to the 2018 budget, you will see that it is pretty close to what it is this year. And we'll be happy to get those numbers for you.
Yeah, the chief of staff position was not included in the 2020 budget.
Right.
Okay, then that makes sense. The chief of staff was not included in the 2020 budget.
An administrative assistant position was. In the 2021, there is not the administrative assistant position, but there is the chief of staff position. So that's the difference.
So in 2020, where was the chief of staff allocated?
It was not there. It was eliminated, and the individual who was in the position was covering the acting role of the director of economic and community development, and his pay was associated with that department.
Okay, but in 2019, that pay would have been in the budget, would have been budgeted for, was it budgeted for 2020 at all? No.
No.
But it's now been budgeted for 2021.
Correct.
And as I said, if you go back to the 2018 budget, you will see it.
Because it was budgeted for 2018, but not 2018 and 2019, but not 2020.
And I don't actually, Kim, let's look at that too, because 2019, it should have been budgeted at the beginning, but then we changed it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get some details on that, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
And Mayor, we do have one hand raised, so if it's okay, I'll go ahead and bring them through.
Please.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yes, I wanted to ask the same exact question. I was trying to figure out where the $20,000 was coming from.
Yes, we had a position of chief of staff, and that position, which paid, I'm going to say right around $55,000. And that position temporarily was an acting position in economic development. So that salary got shifted over to that other department. And now, as that person has now come back to my department and is no longer the acting director of economic and community development, that funding will come back into this department. But
okay.
We eliminated the other salary that was in here.
So that person was in economic development and got paid $50,000?
Oh no, when they were director of economic and community development, they got paid as a director. So they made more money in that position. But
Okay.
they took a pay cut to come back to the chief of staff position.
Okay.
Right.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else from out there in Zoom land or Facebook land? All right, thank you, everyone. And the Office of the City Solicitor, please.
Get unmuted here. Good evening, council. Good evening, mayor, public. Our budget is also pretty boring. Nothing has changed except for we did lower our professional services by $5,000. Last year, we budgeted $25,000. Next year, we're budgeted $20,000. Everything else is the same except for stuff that is out of our control. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't really have much.
I have none. Budget team?
No.
Council members? And community?
We do have one hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and bring them through.
Thank you.
You can speak now.
Hey, would you mind explaining to us in TV land what professional services are?
Sure. Yeah, professional services in my office, the solicitor's office. So the solicitor, and I probably should have given a little intro. I apologize. The solicitor's office is basically the in-house counsel, the attorneys for the city. So we're the attorneys for the city of York. So professional services that come out of our office are usually, most often it's if we had a witness, an expert witness, we had to pay for a trial or something along those lines. This year, actually, we've been very lucky and haven't really had to touch that line item very much. I think we've only spent $1,000 this year. Some of that is because of COVID. With the courts being closed, we haven't had as many cases go to trial as we normally would. But yeah, typically professional services for our office are usually expert witnesses, tax experts, stuff like that.
Thank you.
No problem.
And anyone else from the community? Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next, I believe I saw Chairwoman Karen Rollins Fitch from the Human Relations. There she is.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, budget team, and city residents. So I am Karen Rollins Fitch. I am the chairwoman of the City of York Human Relations Commission. To make sure everyone is familiar with the Human Relations Commission, we administer and enforce the anti-discrimination ordinance of the City of York. And we may initiate, receive, investigate, and adjudicate complaints charging unlawful discrimination of parties within the City of York. So our budget for 2021 is extremely lean, I would have to admit. Some of the things that we were able to get through prior to COVID, which I'm sure has knocked everyone for a loop in 2020. We did have a successful diversity dinner in January of 2020. We did hire 2 new staff members. We had a complete staff turnover. So we had 2 staff members, a full-time and a part-time. We were able to move from the off-campus location to the City Hall campus over the summer. And we also started a junior HRC for younger members of our community who are interested in learning more about social justice. So that was that for 2020. And for 2021, we plan to continue the education and outreach to our city residents and our municipal neighbors, as well as we're actually, our scholarship, our Lewis Atwater Scholarship does so well in outreach to the school districts within York County that we've actually been requested to continue to do that, even though we're not doing a diversity dinner in 2021 due to COVID. So we're actually trying to figure out how we can do a platform for to honor and recognize seniors throughout the York County high school system that are doing social justice activities in their schools and in their communities. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have a question for the budget team, and that is the reduction in insurance allocations and business administration allocations. Significant chunks. It makes it look like the HRC is getting less, I should say, but it's actually, it appears to be, they got less last year, but now, because there's, I'm confused. I'm confused by there's allocations missing. So is there anyone from the budget team that can explain this to me?
Mayor, this is an example of where the expenses were pulled out of the human resources and business administration allocations in previous years and moved up to the additional fringe benefit expenses at the top.
Ah, now I see them. Okay, I was looking all over and I didn't see. No, wait a minute. That's payroll, wages, and salaries. Benefits. Got it. Okay, so their budget is remaining the same as it did last year, essentially.
Yeah, you can see there's a little bit of reduction in other professional services based on what they were planning to do with their dinner and such in the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. Any question from budget team?
No.
Okay. Any question from city council members? And any questions or comments from the community?
We do have one hand raised.
Okay, great.
Stephanie, if you can go ahead and speak.
Good evening. Again, I just had a question regarding the CDBG line item. Is that 10,000 that's allocated for 2021?
That was the request.
That's the request?
Correct.
And they got 5,000 in 2020?
Correct.
Okay, I will hope that that they would get that 10,000. I'm just saying in 2021. I don't know what the request was last year, but to get 5,000 when I think that they should get the 10,000. That's, and can you go further down? I'm sorry, but I'm looking at this on the screen, so I can't see the bottom of it. I should have took a look at this. Thank you very much. All right, that's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from our community? Hearing none, that ends our session with the elected officials and appointed officials.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And Administrator Ray, would you like to start us through the process of reviewing business administration? And would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, that would help. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and citizens of York. Just a brief overview of the business administration. We're comprised of the Office of Business Administration, the Bureau of Finance, Office of Information Technology, the Bureau of Parking, the Office of Human Resources, which includes risk management, and the White Rose Community Television. Our department provides the financial management support services, human resources management, and information systems management to the entire city. In addition, we provide parking system operational services to the City of York General Authority. Just like to briefly go over some of our 2020 accomplishments. It was the purchase and implementation of a grants tracking and allocation software program. The purchase and implementation of the budget planning and development software that you're seeing in use tonight. The selection of a grants and special projects coordinator. A termination of professional services contracts totaling approximately $234,000 per year. Termination of a software support agreement with RSM with an hourly rate savings of approximately $40 per hour. We've gone with a different provider. Business administration helped close the agreement with York Water for the sewer and refuse billing collection service. As the mayor mentioned, we also help implement and help the treasurer's office with the sewer/refuse amnesty program. And we're part of the team that has begun the monetization process for the potential sale of the wastewater treatment plant. Our 2021 goals and objectives is the purchase and implementation of an enterprise resource system to replace Dynamics, and the creation of a citywide centralized purchasing program and further implementation of Article 36. So we would concentrate departmental purchases with locally owned small and disadvantaged businesses. There are no proposed significant increases or decreases in revenue or expenses in the business office's business administration budget. Or if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Just to clarify real quick, business administration is obviously one of the departments here at the city, but within business administration, there's actually a separate budget for the Bureau of Administration, which is the budget that you're seeing here, is what Mr. Ray had just discussed, that there was no significant changes.
Thank you. And just for my benefit, you're saying no significant changes, but I see a $140,000 increase. So where am I looking to find that? I see. Is that the breaking out of pension and health allocations? Because didn't business admin, weren't they part of the issue where some of the employees were not being allocated those because they were also paid out of Fund 70?
I believe that's correct, Mayor. Yes.
So now this new system actually has, whether you're paid out of Fund 70 or not, you're actually getting your fair portion of those allocations.
Correct.
Okay, so thank you. And I'm going to review this more, but this is something that was an issue for us for years and years when we couldn't understand allocations. Particularly when I dove deeper into it, I found that there were employees that received no allocations. And the reasoning was that because they were being paid out of the same fund as the allocations were coming out of. So it didn't seem like it needed to be accounted for, I believe is kind of how it was explained to me. I asked that it be accounted for, and now it's my understanding that you are now accounting for it through this new system. Just want to make sure I'm clear.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We Tom, would you like to guide us through the rest of your department instead of me going item by item here?
Well, the next would be human resources, and I'm going to let Ms. Robertson address her area and risk management.
There does look like that there's a hand up for an attendee.
Yes, good eye. Let me put them through. Go ahead.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, my question is, I overheard about the purchasing of businesses. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, the city of York in its codified ordinances has what's called an Article 136. And the purpose behind that article is to provide small and disadvantaged businesses a better opportunity to provide service to the city. And this has been a item of discussion between the administration and city council for approximately, I'm gonna say, a year and a half, 2 years. And we're trying to formulate a plan on how to increase the city's use of small and disadvantaged businesses to stimulate their economy and hopefully their growth. Mayor, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, just one correction, just in case any former council people are watching. This discussion has been going on between council and the mayors for at least 20 years.
Okay,
So,
my apologies.
Trying to get this ordinance to actually be as effective as it was intended beginning. But yeah, at this time we are trying to, Sheree McFadden is working. She's in our Department of Community or Economic and Community Development, and she is working on registering businesses that meet the criteria for Article 136. And so if you have a business, or if anyone listening has a business that you consider a small business that you think you might have services that the city needs or that the city might contract for, you can get your business to be registered by contacting Sheree McFadden. That's S. McFadden, McFadden, SMCFADDEN at yorkcity.org. So we are working right now on trying to get these get businesses registered and documented. We have had very few small businesses responding to our requests for proposals. Now I got to say that we don't really have a lot of there aren't a lot of proposals that come out of the city, which is why we're working on something called the Local Sourcing Initiative and bringing in other businesses like York Hospital, like WellSpan and York College and other businesses that would also participate in trying to do more business and support more businesses within the city.
Understood. That's a really cool idea. Is that federally funded or is that, city funded through taxpayer dollars?
There's no funding. What we're asking is that local people with businesses contact us, and you will get extra points on your application when we ask for proposals. Say we want to fix a sidewalk, and we ask for proposals to fix that sidewalk. If you are a business that meets the criteria for small and disadvantaged businesses, you'll get a couple extra points on that proposal. And even though you may not be the cheapest, or there may be you'll get an advantage. And so that's how we're trying to do a little bit more to support the growth of businesses within the city of York. And this is a thing that's been on the books for 30 years almost, but it just hasn't been implemented very well. And we're trying to find better ways. And thank you for asking, because this is exactly what we need to do. We need people to come to us and let us know about their businesses. And then we need people to apply when we're putting out requests for proposals.
Yes, we definitely do. I don't want to be on here forever, but what can you elaborate on what the RSM is? I've never heard of that.
I'm sorry, RFP is a request for proposals. So anytime we have a job, if it meets a certain level, then we have to put out a request for proposal to inform businesses that this job is out there, and you have an opportunity to put in a bid for that. But if you have a local business, as I said, if you wrote that email down, Cherie McFadden is the person to talk to, and she will be able to explain all of this to you.
Yeah, Mayor, I think Mr. Collier was asking about the acronym RSM for the dynamics support.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't hear RSM.
Okay, I believe that's what you were asking about, Mr. Collier, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, RSM was a company that supported our dynamics accounting system. They were charging what I'm going to say a high rate, but with poor service. So we made the move to another company that has also been providing some service for the city called Mazix at the reduced rate of the $40 per hour. And so far they are getting done what they say they're going to be doing. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. One final question. As far as the sale of the wastewater treatment plant, is there anything that could stop that from happening, or, you know, any other options, or are we at that point where it's just that's just where we at right now?
Well, I'll just say that we have a difficult situation right now, and the council and my office have another almost 2 months to figure out if there are any other options. So we are going to be continuing to look at this. No option is a done deal unless the mayor and the city council agree to it.
Okay, is leasing an option, or is it just a flat out sale? And are people going to get offered jobs as well?
The leasing was an option that was tried, but it could not work because the companies trying to lease it could not use the plant as collateral to, this is one of the reasons, they could not use the plant as collateral to take out loans to get into the leasing agreement. There's also difficulty with an agreement with the other municipalities that use the plant. So that was tried by Mayor Bracy, and it was not successful. And yes, there is a clause within the agreements with any purchaser that the employees must stay on as per their contract and be offered jobs with the new company.
So just to be clear, there is a successor clause in place.
Yes.
Mayor, we need to be careful in this discussion because this is an ongoing process.
Okay, but it was included in the.
Yes, it is included, and it was included in the request for proposals that existing employees would be offered employment from the successful bidder.
Any further questions from the community?
We do have another hand raised. I'll go ahead and put Matt through.
Hey, Mr. Ray, could you please explain the grants and special projects coordinator position, a little bit about what that is, and was it added to your budget?
First of all, that position has been in my budget ever since I've started for the city of York. We've always had a grants and special projects coordinator. That person left in January of 2018, I believe, or 2019, no, 2018. And we've been looking for a successor rather than paying contractors to perform that work. So it has always been budgeted. The roles and responsibilities of the Grants and Special Projects Coordinator is to help departments citywide to find available grants to be used to help pay for things for the city. And special projects is basically whatever the mayor or I decide to assign the individual within their wheelhouse. So it has been a budgeted position, it's not a new one. The primary goal is to research and find grants that the city can apply for and obtain, and then help administer those grants along with the departments.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there? All right, Tom, you wish to continue, please?
I think we're gonna move on to human resources, and that'll be Ms. Robertson.
I guess I'll let everyone see me for this portion of the show. I'm Kim Robertson. I'm the Deputy Business Administrator for Human Resources. I oversee what you'll see here for Human Resources and also the risk management budget. I work under Mr. Ray, and in our department, we handle all kinds of aspects of humans and resourcing, including employee relations, attendance management, personnel records management, benefit administration. We deal with active employees and retirees. We are staff, provides staff administration for the pension plans. Also, I guess that falls under risk management. We're one staff that kind of handles everything involving the employees and from recruiting to retirements. In our budget, the majority of our expense, and give me a second since I'm also driving here, I will share my screen, is related to union relations for the most part. Our largest line items consist of money set aside for any arbitration costs, which we do our darndest not to get to and work with the unions to avoid. And then also our other professional services line item here is specifically for outside legal counsel that specializes in union relations that that assist us through any grievances or process that we have with the unions. The rest of our budget specifically remains unchanged, except for where you see civil service expenses. We are also the staff administration for the Civil Service Board, which oversees the hiring and promotion of police and fire positions. And so due to the cost of testing for entry-level, probationary, and promotions, there's written and oral testing and some physical agility and that kind of things. They do need a budget in order to pay for those expenses, and that comes through human resources and then gets transferred back. The departments of fire and police you'll see line items in their budget. So they get paid out of my budget, and then police and fire kind of essentially pay us back. But it's still a total of a $20,000 expense to our general fund related to the Civil Service Board. That is pretty much the extent. Just like a lot of the budgets, you will see a decrease in salary and wages from 20 to 21, mainly because in 20, due to our bi-weekly pay schedule, we ended up with 27 pays. So we had to budget for the additional pay that is going to happen at the very end of December. So that was a little bit of help in terms of reducing expenses for 21 because we're back to 26 pays. That's all I got. Any questions?
None for me, thank you. Council members? I'm assuming the budget team doesn't have questions on the budget team's budget.
No, sir.
Okay.
part of the budget team, I do have a question. Ms. Robinson, you said that the salaries went up because of 27 pays versus 26.
They went down for 2021 because there were 27 pays in 2020.
In 2020. Okay,
Yeah.
can you scroll up? I'm sorry, I can't see I guess that's what's throwing me off, the top numbers, the years.
Oh, yeah. We have
Oh,
the
that's your
2020
2020
amended projections, which are not up to date due to our issues
Okay.
with the finance system. Yeah, so across the board, all of my staff are non-affiliated employees, so we have no pay increases that are due to collective bargaining. So there are no pay increases for anybody in my department because there's no non-affiliated cost of living increases included in the budget as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We do have one hand raised, so I'll go ahead and put him through.
Lou, go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, I do. So how much is an actual arbitration meeting costing you guys?
It depends on how long the process takes. Because just like the union side, we have legal fees associated with, it depends on who's, obviously union initiates arbitration. And so the process begins with them. But it also depends on which union and what type of arbitration. For police and fire, they have interest arbitrations associated with their collective bargaining when that doesn't work out, and that usually ends up with very large expenses. The normal yearly arbitration fees, if we have arbitrations to go to, again, it's dependent on how long and how much work is involved in the proceedings to get from the beginning until resolution or an arbitration award is given.
So are you adding the professional services into the arbitration cost, or is there a flat rate?
This is usually specifically associated with the expenses associated through Tom will be able to help me, the Arbitration Association. This is essentially in addition, we do use this line item specifically for outside legal counsel for expenses associated with an arbitration. So we would reserve this for any arbitration expenses, but there could be legal counsel expenses in there in addition to any fees associated with the arbitration or paying for the arbitrator.
Yeah, Kim, yeah, that's exactly correct. That's basically where it's called AAA, and I think that stands for the American Arbitration Association. That's where any fees due to them as they administer the arbitration process, that's where that's paid from. And then the arbitrator is paid from that line item account, and then associated legal fees could be paid out of there and or the other professional services.
So is there a line in there that shows as far as how much grievances you guys have paid out?
No.
No, this is just budgeting for next year.
I thought we were looking at 2020 as opposed to 2021.
We're looking at what was budgeted for 2020. There's no projection in here yet because of our financial system being down for 3 months and the records not being updated. So we don't have a projected total yet for 2020. And then the same amount was budgeted for 2021, which is the far right column.
There's like a guesstimate as far as how much that was?
No, sir, I couldn't tell you. I do know we were finishing up an interest arbitration with the Fraternal Order of Police at the beginning of this year, which would have added to, probably would have maxed out our arbitration expense.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions? And Kim, are you proceeding with risk management?
I sure will. Well, we've got some of our firefighters coming through in the background, so excuse any background noise. The Bureau of Risk Management, as we like to call it, this is the budget that contains all the expenses for the city's health insurance for active employees and retirees. It also includes the expenses associated with, that's all paid claims. We are self-insured when it comes to our health insurance. And that means that we don't set up a plan, that we have a monthly premium amount that we pay. We actually pay the claims as they come in, and we have the additional expense of having a third party process the claims for us. But we have done multiple studies, and our healthcare broker does them regularly for us to justify that this is still the cheaper option for us to be self-insured. So part of this budget is the claims paid. And let me share my screen again so you can see all of it. All right, so revenues on this is an internal services fund where all the expenses get divvied out across all the other budgets and then returned to us, so that at the end you will see that our budget zeroes out. But the meat of it is what you'll see right here is what we're anticipating for health paid claims, dental, vision, and then down here a little further is our prescription paid claims. Then we also cover, we have basic group life and accidental death and dismemberment that is provided for all full-time employees. And we do have a stop loss insurance, which that is what we pay in order to help cover any claims over a certain amount. It's kind of an insurance policy for our claims, so that if they get over a certain point, then this insurance policy steps in and pays the amounts above that for us. So we do have a yearly cost of that to have that insurance policy to help us to cover any drastic claims that might come through. And those are usually the ones that are associated with the unfortunate health events, cancer, dialysis, those kinds of things. So that is definitely come useful to us in the past and is warranted. We do have some administrative fee associated with contracting with Capital Blue Cross to process our claims, and Vision Benefits of America and Delta Dental, and also with our health broker. We also put money aside. We are also self-insured for workers' compensation. So we put money aside for those claims, and then also for paying a third party to process them for us. We put money aside for unemployment insurance if those claims come through as well. One side note here, my staff, in addition to everything we do with the human resources side, we also provide staff assistance for an employee wellness program, which has really sparked back to life the end of last year into this year. And its membership consists of various employees across the city, and our HR generalist, Helen, oversees it. And they work together to focus on topics that are important to helping our employees maintain wellness. It's good for the employees. They have better health, their quality of life improves. And then on the back end, it also improves us that we've got less claims coming through. So we do at the moment work with Capital Blue Cross and get a $10,000 credit that we can use towards wellness initiatives. So that's where, if you're an employee of the city, you'll see that little packages of wellness related items and literatures coming through. We pay for those, and then also other incentives that come through. So one of their main purposes is making sure we make best use out of that that extra money that we get in from Capital Blue Cross, and making sure it's getting put to good use so that it benefits our employees. The other thing that falls under risk management is kind of like the general liability side of things. So we're outside of health insurance for our employees, and we're back to protecting what we have and what we're doing inside of the city itself. So we do have various insurance policies for property and vehicle, general liability, police professional, public insurance, and then We do have a money put aside for when there are claims that get applied that we have a deductible to pay. Then we have money put aside to pay that deductible out of here. We do have money put aside in addition to everything else my staff does. We also, as staff representative for an employee safety committee, and we're eagerly looking forward to getting that back up and going. We were stalled a bit with and restricted with COVID and then everything else for 2020, but we're looking forward to that. And again, that's the same idea kind of with the employee wellness committee, but in terms of safety for the employees and promoting and making awareness for safety topics, making sure everyone's doing their job as safely as possible. Again, benefit to the employees, but it also reduces our workers' compensation claims, and which is good in the long run for everybody. So there's a lot to this. It's a large amount. And as I said, this is all divvied out. There are certain things like police professional insurance that does not get across to like health and housing. That specifically comes out of the police department. We also do include in here, we're required to do some funding for health insurance claims and expenses for our retirees in the future. So there is money put aside to that to go towards that bucket. So that's what the $100,000 is, which has been pretty steady over the last several years. So I think that's all that I have to say about that. Any questions?
Yes. Would you look at your unemployment? I think that needs to be adjusted.
Yes, I'll take a look at that. Unemployment is kind of rough this year compared to, I believe that maybe on purpose in terms of what we're anticipating with the layoffs that are included in this budget.
Okay.
We're going to have additional unemployment costs.
Yeah, it's just a large amount. So
yes.
Let's take another look at that, please.
Okay.
I have no other questions. Questions from budget team? Questions from council members? And questions from the community?
Oh, we just got one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with the unemployment money set aside, so you guys are planning on laying off people, but it also sounds like you guys are trying to hire people at the same time. Can that be explained, especially with the with Ms. Frost? She wants an assistant or part-timer. Can you explain that, please?
That's the only additional position that's included in this budget. And I believe Ms. Frost had explained the reasoning behind it.
Yes, that's not an assistant, Mr. Collier. That's actually a auditor position, and that is part of the function of my office. So it's actually needed in order to uphold our third-class city codes and our city codified ordinances.
Okay, I was just saying because it was never there before, but you're getting rid of positions that have been there forever. I just don't understand.
Yes, it's actually something that I have requested in prior years and have pushed and pushed since I was controller since 2017. This year, I was just a little more successful in at least being able to present it to the public.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ray, Bureau of Finance.
Cherie.
And we did get another hand just raised, so I'm going to go ahead and put them through. Caller, you can speak.
Yes, this is Cherie.
Oh, that's Cherie.
Yes.
Go ahead, you're on, Sheree.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheree Allwine. I'm Deputy Business Administrator for Finance. Just give you a little overview of our responsibilities. It includes the recording of the city's financial activity, maintaining centralized accounting system, budgeting, pension administration, and debt management. As you will see in our budget, there are different debt service funds, Fund 40, 41, 44, and 45, which are the city's general obligation bonds, which the finance department manages. And also in Fund 60, you'll see the debt service for the sewer revenue bonds. The difference between the general obligation bonds and the sewer revenue bonds is that we can bill the municipalities proportionately for the debt service for the sewer revenue bonds, which is done on twice a year. So our 2020 accomplishments, we created a strong work team. We maintained a professional and positive work environment during difficult and trying times due to the COVID-19 and the vandalism at City Hall. We stayed dedicated to our jobs no matter what obstacles came our way. And we also played an integral role on the new budget software implementation team. For 2021, our goals and objectives, just to kind of reiterate what Tom Ray said, is I'd like to see a new financial management system. And with a new financial management system, I'd like to be able to streamline bank reconciliations to be more automated, be able to produce interim financial statements, and also looking at accounts payable. We'd like to update to paying vendors by ACH automated clearinghouse transfers instead of printing paper checks. In 2021, there were some revenue and expense changes. In the general fund specifically, there has been a decrease of about 10% in the budget for the earned income and distressed pension tax. And this is due basically to the COVID-19 pandemic. Same with the local services tax. I did a decrease of 10% in the budget. And when you're looking at the mercantile and business privilege tax, there is a 20% reduction in budget from 2020. And that is due to the fact that the revenue collected in 2021 for the mercantile and business privilege tax is contingent upon the business's revenue during 2020. And with the closing of the businesses and maybe businesses starting to slowly reopen, I believe that we are going to see a reduction in the mercantile and business privilege tax. You'll also see that under contributions in lieu of taxes, that has been decreased, and that is due to a large contribution that has not yet been confirmed. As you know, in general fund, we're asking for an increase in the refuse fees, $10 per unit per month. And in the sewer fund, we're asking for an increase in sewer fees by $3.75 per 1,000 gallons of water per month. In general fund, there have been no significant increases or decreases in expense. And in the sewer fund, there is an increase in the city's portion of the operation and maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant. There's been an increase of approximately about $418,000. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Sheree. So you mentioned the refuse increases. Now the refuse increases about what percent? For a person that uses refuse is standard. So the refuse is approximately a 50% increase in the refuse fees. Is that correct?
No, it's not a 50%. It's going to be lower than 50%. It's a $10 per unit per month.
Right, but isn't it like 20, $20 per month or something, or 20, is it 20?
Yes, it's $27.85 per month per unit
Right,
at
okay.
this point.
So it's a 30, so it's a little bit more, it's probably about a 35% increase. Okay. 35% increase on the refuse, and then a 28, it's around 1875, I think, for the water. And we're increasing it, what, $3, did you say? $3.75.
$3.75 per 1,000 gallons.
Okay, so.
And that would be an increase from the current, which is $9.10 per 1,000 gallons.
So that's going up 40% too. Okay. Just, these are some numbers that we have to remember, particularly with the sewer fees, because there will be a discussion when we start talking about the wastewater treatment plant sale about whether or not the new owners are going to raise the fees. And I think this is an important point to make, is that even for us to stay afloat this next year, we're looking at close to a 40% fee increase in just 1 year. Any other questions from budget team members?
Yes, I have a question. Ms. Alwan, you had talked about a new enterprise system. Is that budgeted in anywhere?
I'll let Tom answer that question.
Okay.
Ms. Frost, we're going to be looking at some grant money to help purchase that. And as we phase out various and sundry contracts, we'll be using that money to help offset any additional cost.
I'm sorry, you said, what about the contracts?
Any additional contracts that we have for our current software support that we phase out, we'll be using those funds, excuse me, to offset the cost if we happen to receive a grant funding for upgrading our system.
So we would potentially phase out MASIC?
Yes, potentially. Potentially.
Yeah, that's why I said potentially. And do you know the approximate cost of this new enterprise system?
I believe it's around $279,000, but I'll email you the correct figure offline.
Okay, and that's just the system, not for any support?
No, that includes support.
That includes support, and that
Yeah.
would be through whom?
OpenGov.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just as a quick follow-up, obviously there is budget included for our current financial system and the support for it and everything that goes on with that. And that at the moment totals about $175,500. So that's what's in there currently for our system. So the amount that Tom gave you is the first year initial get in the door that we'd have to come up with the difference for.
Got you. Thank you, Kim. And so then is there ongoing costs from year to year?
Yes.
How much are those?
Approximately $193,000 a year, but that includes unlimited licenses and support.
And that also includes other modules besides just finance, correct?
Right. That would include modules for permits, planning, and zoning, our budgeting module, and then the financial package that I believe you attended the demonstration on.
Okay, and that would include modules even for contracts?
No, that's an additional money that we have budgeted in information services.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council members, questions? Any questions from the community? Hearing none, can we hear now from Central Services?
Yes, Mayor. Simply put, central services is to be used for centralized purchasing and basically to take advantage of the economy to scale and making bulk purchases. My personal opinion is the city can do a better job with this, with centralized purchasing. So again, as stated earlier, that's going to be a goal for 2021. And again, the goal of inclusion of small and disadvantaged businesses and local services, as you had mentioned. I don't believe there's any significant increases or decreases in revenue and or expenses, except there may be one in other professional services, which I believe there's a $30,000 increase, and that is to pay for part of the valuation of the wastewater treatment plant.
And that is being funded through a grant, correct? Is that not from DCE?
No, that is the evaluation that is being done as part of the process for us to determine what we think the plant is worth. And if I remember correctly, the successful bidder will be paying half of that cost.
I remember having that conversation with DCED to find out if that was an eligible cost for the grant money from them. So we'll have to talk about that again.
Right. And yeah, I in contact with him about another matter, so I'll make sure I remind them of that.
I have no further questions. Budget team members? Council members? And community members? Okay, hearing none, I believe maybe Josh Houston, are you still on?
I sure am, Mr. Mayor.
Are you going to speak for us for the Office of Information Technology?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Before I get into the numbers, I just wanted to address that as it has been mentioned several times this evening, the IT department has been faced with an unprecedented and rather trying time this year. The vandalism that destroyed our primary servers and networking equipment at City Hall has been our primary goal in correcting for most of the year. And the rest of the year has been spent adjusting our in-house systems to account for COVID. And that has demanded our attention for the rest of the year. We've overcome tremendous odds with the vandalism and built an entire enterprise system from the ground up. And I, for one, want to just applaud my staff for their efforts and honestly just turning out a miracle for the city. I also just want to thank the city employees and the residents for their patience and understanding while IT worked to bring the city back to life. That said, in terms of numbers, what you'll see is under capital software maintenance, that amount has increased. That is to account for additional software and licensing and support on a yearly basis. However, the data processing equipment has decreased. All that we put into data processing equipment is just what we anticipate could be needed for a emergency situation. That would be hardware for employees if a laptop dies, if a phone dies. Hopefully it wouldn't happen, but if a switch dies, that's what we're accounting for in there. You'll also see that our professional services is up just a tad. That is accounting for having to bring in additional support to help us through this trying year. We are 90, I would put us at 95% recovered. But we would need additional outside assistance from vendors that we have brought in to help us through this, just to see it through to that 100% mark that we're desperately trying to get to. Other than that, that's pretty much where we are. We're chugging along. Like I said, it's been very trying, very stressful on everybody, and we just appreciate everybody's patience throughout this.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate you and your team. This has been, it's been 2020.
Yes, it has.
You got 2020. But you guys have definitely stood up and taken the challenge, and we really do. We all appreciate that. Thank you so much. I don't have any further questions on the budget. Budget team?
No.
Council members? Questions or comments from the community?
There is a community question from Facebook, sir.
Okay.
The question is the financial just reference built into the new enterprise system?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'll wait for clarification.
Josh, I think you had mentioned an enterprise system and we've been talking about the other system, and you were talking about your IT infrastructure system.
Understood. So with that, yes, it is taken into account with the new enterprise system, with the new enterprise structure that we've built. We can accommodate pretty much anything. We're right back to where we were before all this happened. I am confident, especially since we've already implemented a portion of what OpenGov offers. All we're talking about at that point is just scaling it out. And with scaling it out, we can easily accommodate that.
And the follow-up question to that is, can you talk about the network security actions taken and the cybersecurity protocols put in place?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm actually happy to report that as of Sunday, we have partnered, well, correction, one of our accomplishments this year before everything happened is we actually partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to provide free to us cybersecurity testing. As we built out the system, we definitely had security in mind. And our latest report, now that the system has been up for about a month, the latest report has been we have 0 security vulnerabilities. And that's tremendous in my eyes. Department of Homeland Security, the report that we got was amazing. So we definitely take security to heart when it comes to the IT infrastructure.
Yeah, Josh, just follow up a little bit. If I remember correctly in reading your email, we're having approximately 30 a week. And now we're down to 0.
Correct. The report is done. The report and the testing is done once a week, usually on a Friday. And yes, we were at about 30 vulnerabilities a week that we spent trying to just squash them one by one. But every time we squash one, another one will pop up. And for a month now, we have been at 0.
He thanks you for that, resident. Thanks you for that question. And I don't know if you can answer this question, but the resident would like to know, what about building security?
Building security. After the break-in, now, before I answer that, first, this is not entirely within my bailiwick, but I'm happy to answer that. When the doors in the building security were taken care of and replaced, building security was top priority. We have much better doors in place, much better security systems in place, and things have definitely been tightened. In addition to that, IT has taken advantage of this situation to build out what we had wanted to build out, which is, for instance, if this were to happen again, hopefully never in our lifetimes, but if it were to happen again, we could be up and running within a week instead of months.
The resident says thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on the building security, I know that the replacement doors on the east side of City Hall are going to be replaced with a stronger type glass. So hopefully that a fire extinguisher won't be able to break. And then Mr. Rudolph and I, the building maintenance superintendent, we've talked about the other exterior doors and windows. And we'll probably be talking to the grants coordinator about some grant money to try to get those replaced and have a better increase our security.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
All right. And for our final presentation, the Bureau of Parking. Cottrell, are you going to honor us with your presentation?
Sir, good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. The City of York Parking Bureau, we manage the 3 parking garages downtown and also an additional 11 parking lots within the city. We also manage the parking meters as well. And the parking system is pretty much split between the city and the City of York General Authority, who actually own the parking meters, the parking lots, and the parking garages. So when you look at the budget for the Parking Bureau, the first 4 cost centers, which are basically for the 5 for the 3 garages, for the parking lots, and for the parking meters. The expenses that are under those line items are actually reimbursed by the City of York General Authority. So it does show up as a revenue line item for the city, but it ends up being for those expenses ends up netting out because the authority does pay back whatever those expenses are expected to be. There was one major item that was in parking enforcement, and really that just amounted to a contractual item that was pretty much housed within a capital expense, and also some software expenses for a contract that we have for new parking enforcement handhelds that we had to purchase last year. And the reason we had to purchase those last year is because the software that we had at the time was actually going to become obsolete. So we did have to make that change. It did result in some additional maintenance costs and subscriptions and things of that nature. That was previously housed as a line item that was actually under capital and for the DP software maintenance. So we had to, and it no longer had to be a capital expense. So it's all wrapped up in one line item. So you do see an increase there from $25,000 last year to $48,500 this year. And that's just a combination of all of those line items coming together. But beyond that, we've done a really good job of keeping our expenses either flat or lowering them as far as a parking system overall, and just breaking out some more line items for some additional clarity as far as how those products are used and what is purchased. But that's pretty much it with our budget. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have no further questions. Budget team, any questions? Council members? And members of the community?
We got one.
Okay,
Go ahead, sir.
welcome.
Just to be curious, just out of curiosity, I'm trying to figure out how to read this. Are you guys operating or projecting to operate in negative $632,000?
The reason for that is because when you look at, there are 6 cost centers that are actually under parking. You have 3 for the parking garages, 1 for the parking meters, 1 for the parking lots, and then you also have 1 for parking enforcement. Now, 5 of those line items are reimbursed by the general authority. The other one, which is for parking enforcement, is the one that the city controls. It does not have a revenue line item attached to it at this point, so technically it is operating as a negative right now. But the revenue that is generated under parking enforcement is actually housed under the finance department and will not show under parking right now.
So do you have an idea of what that revenue is?
It is typically in the range of $800,000 to $1 million. It does vary from the year to year. I know this year it was severely impacted by COVID and because of the city shutting down. Also, in addition to that, we did have some transition onto a new system with your county actually, and being able to migrate onto a different system. So it did interrupt a few systems with us. In general, though, you will see that between 800,000 and $1 million though.
Okay, Control, let me ask a quick question. You're talking there about the parking fines and the magistrate fines, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and we're predicting about a $350,000 reduction in that revenue line item in 2021.
Correct, and that's due to the current restrictions that we're under. Generally, it would be closer to $1 million, but we are projecting that to be about 20% lower right now.
So are you saying now, let's say 800,000, 3, that's 450. Are you suggesting that we might be operating these parking garages at a nearly a $200,000 loss this year?
It's possible. I know everything in parking has been impacted from any sort of parking revenues when it comes to the meters, when it comes to parking permits, things of that nature that would typically house all the revenue. I know all of those things were impacted due to the restrictions of COVID-19. So we've had a number of people had to cancel accounts because they were working from home, and a number of other adjustments. So those things have not returned to their normal levels as of right now because people are still working from home. It's also impacted the county, how they hear cases, the amount of potential revenue that we would see when it comes to parking fines. So in total, yes, that is definitely possible that it will be operating at a $200,000 loss right now.
So the city being in the parking business could be a losing business, at least this year.
Oh, at least this year, yes.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, how about
I'm
the
sorry,
years prior?
Oh, go ahead, sir.
No, I said out of curiosity, the years prior, were we profitable, or was it in the same range as far as being negative?
No, it was a lot more profitable in previous years. And there's really 2 parts to the enforcement side. So when it comes to parking tickets, parking fines, of course, they have to be paid, but the side of it is that it does have to go through the county, hearing cases, things of that nature. So that side of it does really impact the enforcement piece. But in general, it is profitable, and we do cover our expenses.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the community? Any other broad comments from any members of the team, council, elected officials? Anyone on the call want to make a final comment before I close the hearing for the first day of budget hearings? Okay, hearing none, I will remind everyone that tomorrow at 6 o'clock, the budget hearings will continue. And we will hear from the Department of Economic and Community Development, and we will hear from Public Works. And part of Public Works is, of course, the Bureau of Wastewater Treatment. So tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we will be returning. And then on Thursday, we will hear from Police and Fire.
And Mayor, we do have another hand. I'm going to go ahead and put him back through.
Okay.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, is anyone downtown or any elected officials, supervisors of the sort getting any raises at all in 2021?
No on any elected officials. It's, I believe, I won't get into the legality of it, but I'm not sure that we are allowed to raise salaries in the middle of individuals being in office. I think that is a Commonwealth law.
Correct.
Okay. And directors are all NAF employees, correct? So they're not going to be receiving any increases?
Correct.
Looking at you, Tom.
No, that's correct, Mayor. The only pay increases for 2021 will be those that we're required to give under contractual arrangements with the 5 bargaining units that we have.
I remind everyone, these things that we are saying right now, these are assuming we cannot come to a better outcome through a potential sale of the wastewater treatment plant. So I hesitate when I hear things being said so finally, because a final budget has not been adopted. These are proposals. So everyone across the board that has spoken tonight, these are the things that they are proposing for the budget. The actual budget will be presented by my office to the city council on, is it the 17th of November, correct?
Yes.
17th of November. So these are the preliminary hearings on the draft budget proposal.
Mayor, there is one other request. A resident would like to know where they can get, they need a revenue and expense chart to understand this conversation, the past budget years versus actual. Is there somewhere they can access that?
Are things up online yet? Tom?
My understanding is there's a, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that there's a link on the city's website for the draft 2021 budget.
Yes, that's my understanding. Using our new system through OpenGov, we were able to make essentially a virtual budget book that you can click through that includes all kinds of charts and graphs to help explain this. It's at this point, it's in a draft version, and we'll be adding to it as we get to the point of submitting the proposal. So we do plan on having more overall graphs and charts in there. And I do believe that there is a link on the website for that. If not, it will be there shortly so that people can follow along with us as we finish this process.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it yet. I'm trying to find it. It should definitely be put up here at the top of the page.
Okay, just to ask another, my question. Tom Ray, can you clarify which 5 you're talking about? Is that like the superintendent of building maintenance or superintendent of wastewater, or are you talking about somewhere else?
I'm not sure, Mr. Collier, if I understand your question.
Said there are 5 contractual
There's
raises you
5
have to-
bargaining units that we are contractually obligated to provide cost of living adjustments next year. That would be the Fraternal Order of Police, White Rose number 15, the International Association of Firefighters, local 627,
Right.
the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, local 776, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, local 226, and the York Public Employees Association, which is affiliated with AFSCME.
And okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And I believe we just recess this hearing, I think is the appropriate measure to take. We will recess until 6 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.